0. Let me go in and make sure it's okay. Let's see. I think we got a couple people already in. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, they're starting to come in now. Let me check the sound. Chantel's in the house. Okay, we're good. Yeah, all right, Chantel's in the house. Chantel Renee, good to see you. Need to get you on here. I need to tell Morgan to contact you. Candy Wagatha, Lindy Londongren, Patricia Trudeau, Carol Trudeau, Donna Ann Chase, thank you for the kind message the other day in post. Sandy Hunt, Cricket Holden, Anna Durbez, Ali Ray, Janet Gilliam. They're coming too fast. We got 24 in the house. There's Jody Lee, the one I was telling you about that had the experience.
Okay. Cool.
It's all right. So we got 30 plus now. I'm going to go ahead and put this up there so I can read the comments. Let me just plug in. We got a typical Solji and Rick Jewers fashion. We've got an impromptu broadcast today, energy update. It's always very informative with Rick. We've been through a lot of, what would you call it? Change of pace, change of tempo since the 1st or the 21st or the 11/11 of 18.
Yeah.
So it's going to be exciting to catch up on this and see where you're at, what you've been doing. Welcome back to the show, Rick Jewers. Thank you for all the work you do on behalf of humanity. And I say that on behalf of everybody here and on the replay.
Thank you as well, Todd, and it's a pleasure to be back. And I thank all that's on this journey and everyone contributing to it. And it's just again, the most auspicious time. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it really is. Now, I'm just going to jump right into it, just as what we always do.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been putting a lot of stuff out, as usual. And one of the things that I'd like to get into, as we can understand everything as an energetic expression. I had Magenta Pixie on a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about stuff she'd been writing about, Donald Trump, what is Trump, and that type of thing. But looking at it from a higher perspective, looking at it, what is the energetic explanation or the energetic reality of it, rather than looking at it from, say, a 3D level, prejudice level, this or that, right or wrong level. Some of the stuff you've been putting out has been in regard to what's going on in India, in France. I read this stuff and I can see where you're going with it, and I'd like to get into that a little bit deeper so we can get this laid out to this broad-based audience, which seems to be an energetic impression or expression externally of what's going on with us internally. And I'm talking about really, as a lot of people have put, this year, 2019, is the year of sovereignty and or expansion. You want to elaborate on what's going on, how it's related to us, and so on?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, you can draw that very quick connection to that. First the process began within, rationalizing the dark and light aspects, to come to that yin and yang balance. And then once one achieves that they have control of their inner self and have achieved at least a balance, then they keep integrating more light, which builds up their auric field and their mental capacity at reflecting it into the outside world. So you're absolutely correct. As a collective, what we are doing, we have surpassed enough of the light quotient, past the yin and yang level, above that balance, that now actually light is diminishing the darkness within each one, and it is being reflected out into your reality, which creates the change, and which is in conjunction with the ascension to take us to, not actually take us to, it's better to say it creates the 5D timeline. It integrates it and it puts it intact, and then we have more slipping into it and residing onto it, building the 5D stronger towards what everyone wishes: bliss, harmony, love, all of the good things. Yes.
Equality.
And
Equality.
yeah, all of those things.
That's a pretty big deal. Especially the one in India. I saw reports of 150. I saw reports of 200 million people for that 2-day strike. That's even in a country or a subcontinent that big. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of sovereignty being expressed. I mean, I got to believe that 150, 200 million people has to really, the entire world you would think the whole 8 billion would have to feel the effects of that energetically.
You totally very impressive and totally indicative, of the levels and classes of the population. What you've seen there, was relatively financially stable ones within certain government positions in those offices, down to poor farmers standing side by side, making this huge statement. But the magnitude of it, just absolutely, I must say, I was just totally impressed with it. Exactly. But it's also, this is the transition.
Yeah.
We were told it was going to occur. We knew it was. And, we have not been lied to. And many have forecasted this, prophetized it. And it is so. So we are amidst of it now. And you're seeing the huge uprisings globally. And it's because, again, of the light community and the light quotient that they have received. They've become so powerful with the light. What it does, it pressures the darkness and it makes it more compressed, and it creates very distinct pressure on it. And it cannot, let me say, what you're seeing with the anger in people that is being outwardly projected towards what is causing that, also causes the implosion of it, because this is how divine energetics work. So before we create the new, we have to eliminate through a process of the light pressuring the darkness and compressing it, that it has nowhere to go, which we are doing, and it has no choice but to submit and, let's say, go out of existence what we're creating.
Yeah. So in other words, it's that force of the intention. One end of the spectrum being, for lack of a better way of saying it, projecting pure love and light, and the other one end of the spectrum, but being one and the same thing because it's coming from the same pure heart, which is, I've had enough of this. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done with this, and that's something that you have seen a lot of empath frequencies putting out in the past few months, is where they're no longer taking everything in on their own, and they're saying, "Hey, I've had enough of this."
Exactly.
I've had enough of this. Another thing you've been writing quite a bit about, which I found very interesting, has been the reemergence or reinforcement of, because we've seen the reemergence of the divine feminine, but the reinforcement of her frequency, her role, and you've been doing some forecasting on that, which is what you've actually talked about this in the past too. Would you go into that a little bit? What you've been receiving over the last couple of weeks? I think I've seen you writing this stuff. What's come up with that?
Again, what I received from Father and Divine Council, that it was time now for the feminine to push further ahead. The feminine have been leading this ascension all along, and they are a part of the Trinity, what I was given, and it is time for them to go forward so that we are more apt and readily can create this 5D, and which they are doing, and you're receiving your confirmations. I received this when I was in the mountains with Father, and when I come out, I was in speaking with Divine Council and Father. I was in there for a day or so. I had anticipated staying longer, but no, I was called to come right out and began delivering the message. And I shared it with a couple prominent, maybe several divine, powerful feminine comrades when I come out first, before I began putting things out public. I said more or less, okay, heads up, here's what's occurring. We need all of the feminine to charge forward now. The doors are opening for them to do that. And this is the divine timing, and it's huge. It's backed by the energy, divine energy backing and supporting the feminine. It is the greatest it ever was yet. It's just immense and so powerful. And really, if you wish to look at physics and energy on a 3D or 4D level, it would greatly appreciate the amount of energy that's stored here that has to go ahead to create. It cannot remain here where it's at. So what you are seeing, you know, and as I come out very quickly, we're receiving all the confirmations in different areas. French protest up in Canada here, the gas protest, India. All you were seeing was the feminine being totally put out front, reported on in this respect. And again, it's, you know, these are the confirmations that it is real and that it was so. And as I said, you know, part of what I do is empower mostly the feminine is what I work with, to get them up and come into their empowerment so that, you know, they began creating with all of us as a collective, you know, from a higher state of being, which so many have done and Todd have risen. You know, I'm so fortunate to watch growth of many of these individual females that I am friends with, you know, these divine feminine just rise and, you know, take on their manifestation abilities in the beginning and begin integrating more of their gifts and raising perspective. So without rambling, yes, I know you have a question there.
No. I was getting a confirmation or getting something to ask you, basically. So it or maybe something to say. I don't know. What came in was basically, we've seen, as I want to go back to the lead in of the question, we've seen the reemergence of the divine feminine over the last 2-3 years. This seems to be a little bit different frequency. What you're writing about, the frequency of what you're saying, seems to be more of a. It is a. I hate to say it this way, but it's a have to. It's a have to. It's time for a surrender to the power that we've seen emerge and reemerge. It's time to actually surrender to that power and allow it to lead.
You also have to, but I must include into this, you know, the numbers I'm given to work with, that if you look at the overall light community, with the human sex proportions of it, it is usually 75% female and 25% male. But having said that, us 25% male are also a part of that feminine force.
Absolutely.
Forward.
Absolutely.
We have integrated our feminine aspect. So actually, when I identify it as the feminine per se, it does not mean just all females. It is all of us as a collective going with
that's exactly right.
But it is identified. It is identified. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I thought you were done.
But for intents and purposes, I identify it as the feminine aspect because that is what it is. That's what we push forward. We cannot readily have the masculine going with this, and it's not energetically and divinely set up to do that. We need the biggest charge, the biggest force, and proportionately it is contained within the feminine, and they are doing it on all fronts. And also, yes, it was the time for them to go forward. We had cleared the paths, the seeds were planted, even events were aligned divinely for the feminine to enter in, such as the yellow vest, the India, and also up here in Canada, just only 3 of them, but they're more widespread than that. I only mentioned these 3 just to give an idea, but there's many more globally in that respect.
Yeah, I agree with that, and there's many more globally that information's still being suppressed, and that's fading away more and more every day. And I just want to reiterate too. That's exactly in the terms that I'm speaking. I'm talking about the frequency of her, which is in all of us, but is represented, and I think it's encouraging too. I'm going to pass this information along. When Solargy started 7 years ago, I think it was 78% to 22%. And then it dropped, to the 75-25, and eventually, and today the last time I looked, it was 64.5% women, and what would that be? 35.5% men. And again, we're talking about frequencies, and when I talk about this, feels like a frequency beyond emergence and reemergence, but one of actually surrendering. I'm obviously saying that, from the central point within myself to the feminine energy of myself. And of course, that plays out into all of us and into the groups, regardless of the physical incarnation. But there's no doubt that in the physical incarnation, they have been the majority of the push. And so I think it's a great point. I haven't heard anybody really bring that up. That seems to be the difference between the impression of the feminine energy this year as opposed to the last couple of 2-3 years.
Exactly, and thank you so much. This is such an important topic you just brought up, and I wish to elaborate a little bit more on that, on your numbers. Okay, so what essentially has been occurring since 2012, you always have the dominant feminine aspect going ahead. It usually only goes ahead to the point where you need about 22% of males to the equivalent to, let's say, to sustain them at a certain point. Once the masculine, more of them begin to wake up, your numbers will increase. Like you're saying, 37, that is your clear signal and indication that then the feminine can go further ahead. And it's the rubber band effect that draws the masculine up later. So anytime in the past when you would see the proportions of the awakened feminine to the male, when you would see the male would start to increase, then it's always followed by a significant forward movement of the feminine in creating new scenarios and events, and also dominating the energetic field with that respect. So indeed, totally, it's so significant, and that is what we reached. Actually, I wanted to check on the numbers. We had the Real Angels page, and I checked with Sharon. She's an admin on there just within the last week, and I believe her numbers were very close to yours, Todd, that it was like 67 and 33 male or something. And again, just totally indicative that the time was right for the female again to push forward with this. And the males, the ones that the males that are not awakened, or not, I shouldn't say not awakened, but are not at such the consciousness level that they can be, they are pulled forward as a result of the feminine going forward. You're most powerful at always going forward, and the others, because of the rubber band effect, inadvertently have to follow instead of the feminine stalling and trying directly to assist and wake up the masculine. Well, then they are really becoming stagnant down here. It's always best for them to charge forward, and us, all of the collective, then the rest must follow. This is your strength going forward.
Yeah, almost like that masculine frequency has to create a platform or found a higher more elevated platform or foundation of support, so then the frequency of her can take off, and then the rubber band effect you're talking about takes place. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a base, like it's a springboard, yes, to launch the feminine ahead. So in that respect, the masculine are holding a sort of balance and a thread to allow the feminine to go ahead as well. What you must realize that everyone is working as a team in this, the total masculine and total feminine.
Yeah.
Yes, we are all one, but we do have different tasks at time, but they all converge when we get up there. But everyone is assigned to different tasks with this. And, it's quite a lengthy process, as we know. Many have been coming through this for years, but again, what we've been seeing going on here just in the last week is the most immense, that we've seen yet.
Yeah, and it kind of snuck up too. It was like a subtle rising there. To see those things. You saw it in France, and then
it was like a calm. Yeah, just before that, everything went up. Seemed like it hit a ceiling. Then there seemed like there was pressure, like over the holidays. I know many were transitioning the energy in preparation for this huge leap we are making now. That this is actually a very predominant, huge shift in this now, and also the near future. There's no turning back. The implications that this feminine energetic global effect is having is nothing can reverse it. Actually, it is going to grow immensely, and we are imploding the systems. Everything that you look at will not be the same. It has no choice but to submit and transition or be obliterated. The energy will not allow for it to remain as it is. Energetics does not dictate that. Also, in conjunction, every bit of energy upon the planet is divinely supported with the good intent for all, and it is assured and ascertained that this ascension does occur, and there is nothing that stops this. Nothing prevents it.
Yeah,
it is godly supported, and anyone listening should not have any doubts whatsoever. The confirmations are just abounding to show that this is very real, the transition that we are amidst, and this is really happening. It's not a figment of imagination.
Yeah.
It is, it is in the reality that you see, but we are also creating our other reality from what you might say is imagination, but that's how we create and bring it into being. It's how we create the higher 5D timelines.
Yeah.
It's through your mind, your energetic input into the reality around you that changes it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too about the end of the year, because I know I went through it, Morgan went through it, I know quite a few people, but there seemed to be a period there, and maybe it was from the 21st, I don't know, because dates and the numerical aspect of dates seems to be playing a bigger and bigger role, or it seems like there's some type of convergence with what's coming in and those synchronicities. But I was going to say, it felt like there was the vessel was being emptied right up into the end of the year, and I kept feeling that something big and beautiful was coming. As we've learned, these uncomfortable periods we go through always bring in a refilling of the vessel, as a metaphor, as a frequency. But it seems like that was going on a lot, and there was a question or two in here earlier, which I'll lead into that with what I said, and that is that since the first, there's been a couple of 48-hour periods. There's been some intense times. There's been a lot of physical ascension type of symptoms and consequences
Yep.
So having said that, I'm looking back going, wow, is what we went through at the end of the year? Is this just going to keep coming? But they haven't been as long. But can you speak to the physical part of what's been going on? It seems to be more intense. Has it been, or is that just me and some of the people I'm seeing? Is there a way to deal with it? Get through it a little bit different from, or a little bit easier from your perspective?
Yeah, indeed. This has been a commonality, perhaps extreme fatigue, being nauseated, energy drains, what it felt. This was very common. Let's say the last few days it's not been, but prior to the last few days, yes, there was a period where setting up the energetics for to allow the feminine on the front lines to go forward, there was actually a kickback to empower them further. Of if you look at some remnants of negative energy that could not be there in their way, distracting them. So it was passed back through the collective into very powerful feminine ones, and I also had some of it, that we had to transition this energy because they pushed it back to us. And this is what we do. And they give it to the most powerful transmuters of that negative energy to change the polarity of it. And I know as well, I had assisted at least one, perhaps more, with alleviating some of what they were receiving. I took it into myself to transmute some of it as well. But it was the kickback, all divinely orchestrated and strategically occurred to happen that way. So what they were actually doing is that, feeling the density, wondering WTF, where it come from, what have you. Well, this is where it come from. You were preparing for these times to let your divine comrades on the front lines to go forward as far as they can go to, let's say, to erect the greatest change possible in this shift. So this was a conjoined effort that many were oblivious to what was happening with the actual energetic transitions. So this is why many of you, you were maybe in bed quite a while. I know I have been for the last month as well. I've been let's say, astrally doing much work, but with this body sleeping 12 hours each day. And because just to be open again, I work on so many levels. I am constantly busy. So when this body is laying down resting, I'm, as with all of you, we are working on the higher consciousness levels, preparing things, setting it up, creating. We're also going into the past, omitting negative things to allow for a rise in the dimension we're creating, the timeline we are creating within the dimensional aspect. So there's much work done with that. But instead of getting off track, yes, we all took part of that to allow the others to go forward, and it was a conjoined effort, and it was divinely orchestrated. And I know many of you were not given the heads up on what was actually transpiring. I did come in and I did put a heads up post on what was currently, happening, and suggest for any that are feeling that thought they were done with that kind of heavy transmuting to use their higher divine prowess in their mentality to transmute, transition that negative kickback into positivity, and then it would alleviate their situation.
That's good. That's good info. And I think too, I'll just pass along my own personal experience, because I would think that this is what's happening to these highly sensitive people, who you're describing as those who can actually transmute more powerfully, or can handle it, or whatever you want to call it. we still are in the human vessel, and there seems to be when the impact of it comes in, and I know it's on a personal level, but it's also tied to the collective. There seems to be, knock you into a 3D, very human frame of mind, which
Yeah.
is a tough pill to swallow at this stage of the game.
Well, it does, yes, but it clearly shows you how the negative energy brings the veil back down, as you said, and it's at these times that you have to be selfish with your own energy, meaning that you have to protect it by not interfering with others and not moving. If you're able to stay in your location, stay in a bubble and transmute.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you're more efficient in rising up. You don't wish to be out interacting with other energies and spreading this negativity. These are actually times to go back within your cocoon and get your energy all straightened out and transmuted.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, another thing I've noticed in myself, and again, I've got to believe as individual goes, so goes the collective, because we all are integrating closer and closer, converging more, and that is that when we do fall into that human, it's not beyond us so much. We're quick to reclaim it. In other words, claim, like you said, go into a bubble, do your own thing to claim it and not spread it. In other words, to transmute it yourself and not spread it.
Yeah, but there's also another tool and a great reminder. At times like this, you have many comrades that are of equivalent consciousness or energy. It is most beneficial too for connect with them on the phone or in the physical and do it together as well, because you raise each other up. And when you combine your energies, you're more effective at doing it as well. But remain in the bubble from the outside realities. Just remain, keep your bubble with the like-minded, one of the same consciousness level and energetics. And that is also highly recommended. There are some of us also that in these times, you may have one that's encapsulated with this great negativity in their cocoon, but divinely, we also have at the same times when someone is a conduit for transitioning the negative energy, you also have a balance, another one that is not inundated as much with it because they're there as a control and as a balance to assist in those ones, and you can more readily work together. And as I just shared a bit ago, there were a couple very powerful females that were taking on a lot of the shit, and I went in and I took some from them to assist with them as well, and I transmuted very, very quickly too. But I will say there were periods that it took me 15 and 20 minutes to get rid of some of the nauseated energy, and also from within this vessel. So it was very, very profound. And the bit what I experienced from this negative energy, because it was so dense and so compact, so condensed, that it was the magnitude of it was just so high that it really took a lot of energetic effort to transmute it, as you're saying.
Yeah.
In some cases, yeah.
Another thing I noticed too, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, and I'm going to go back to it, see what your perspective is. There was several schools of thought on or around this description of 2012 is when everything actually occurred, whether it was occurring on the physical timeline or not, because we were no longer dealing with just a linear. And there was like a period of time, some people say up to 2017, where there was almost like a pause, like a suspended animation, so that we could be allowed to embody and download and channel and share and exchange soul code and prepare for the 2018 and 2019. And what I'm getting at is what I'm noticing, not someone who these past few years had religiously followed the stargates and the solstices and the eclipses and equinoxes and the dates, the 11/11s and 12/12s and such. But there seems to be a more of an alignment with the numerical, the sacred geometry, whatever you want to call it, the synchronicities, even something such as the seasons. And as I look as we go into the spring, it feels like this thing is crescendoing into what we look at on the surface and all the things that spring offers. You know, a lot of light, a lot of color, a lot of change and rebirth. How do you feel about that from your perspective? Are you feeling that?
Yeah, and I'm totally seeing it. I can concur with it fully. Let's just quickly look at the numeral sequences that are popping up everywhere. For one thing, they are a guidance mechanism to let you know that you are going on your right path. But let's say also at this time that they are popping up more, because they are also, if you have a number sequence popping up, you readily identify with it, and immediately it raises your vibration to some degree. Yeah. So this is very important why this is occurring, and it's to keep everyone to the possible highest vibration. So it's not by random. You're going through your day, and all of a sudden, everywhere you look, you're getting these numeral sequences. And everyone knows the importance of numbers in respect to this ascension. It was numbers that created or that awakened, most anyway. And having said that, that's why they're conveniently and divinely placed throughout your day, and that your attention will be attracted to those, to recognize that. Yep. And and immediately when you do, your mentality changes and say, hey, there's got to be something good going on, right? It's always higher, because you don't see the numbers when you're in a dense 3D state, if you will. So this tells you that there's higher energetics at hand, but it also tells you, okay, hey, listen up, keep your vibration highest. We're putting these numeral sequences out through the sequence of your day in specific places to keep your vibration overall. And this is happening with everyone because, again, it is that conjoined effort worldwide to keep and maintain the highest vibrations. So these are very, very important. And also with that, what you can say, where more and more of the masses are awakening, they are also adding to the energetics of the numbers, because we are a collective in telepathy. So then the numbers are being transmitted to everyone, and also they are reflected and created outwards into the reality as a whole. So this is a giant network, and the more that keep connecting into this network, it energizes it more. It makes it so powerful, which we are doing, and it has the fundamentals of creation in there, which will be coming shortly. We have many angels, what I call them, at the next levels of remembering their sub-creator skills, and I will be putting information to that respect out there. Some things have been seeded on these timelines through ancient secrets, if you will, and closed societies that were benevolent. So we do have some things that are seeded in the timelines of history here that some of the light community have access to, and these vaults are being broken open and now being publicly distributed, that information, in preparation for our next levels that are coming. So you will see things from the past, but you're also with this because we're transitioning out of this history, uh, going into a new, we are creating a new 5D that has a different history. So to do that, what you will be seeing, let's say on a 4D mundane level out there, you'll see archaeology coming up with more and more things that defy present history, because this is the transition to the new one. For instance, what is widely accepted and become a much wider now. There's a lot of, let's say, like Gaia TV or Disclose. There are places, Disclose TV. They are putting out more of this truth, whereas the press, the mainstream press, as we know, was controlled and only put out what they could. But we have overcome that, and now the masses are being subjected to more of the truth, which is artifacts and things being found that defy the written histories. Yeah. And there's so many of them, and we don't need to get into them, but we can say that it is documented proof that it is not fictional. This evidence is actually
absolutely
out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyone who's done some any type of research on the archaeology, it's there. That's a good point. Also, and I wanted to make the point too on the synchronicities. The thing that's really jumped out at me, because so many of us, like yourself, have been somewhat mobile and non-traditional, I guess, if you want to put it that way. So sometimes you end up places like, what the hell am I doing here? But even in those human moments, those 3D moments that these energies bring in and take me to, or take us to, what's really jumped out at me, I've been like that for most of the last couple of days, is the numbers on my phone, on the clock, everywhere that have been coming in those moments, what I wouldn't call a low moment. But, it's one thing to be in the flow and you're like, oh, la-di-da, and hey, 11:11, man, everything's cool. But to see these numbers popping up over the last couple of days, when I, quote unquote, throw up a prayer and then turn my phone, it says 3:33, has been pretty impressive upon me. And even though I might have felt very 3D, it was a very strong validation of just, take a deep breath. We got you. And I think that's the other thing that I'd like to ask you about too, because of your connectivity with the higher realms or the other dimensions. I think as time's gone on, we've felt more and more support. People talk about it. But again, since the first of the year, maybe a little bit before, there seems to be just a more and more powerful, obvious presence of our star family, of our teams, of our galactic families. What's your perspective on that?
Well, indeed, the galactic is a very important component of this overall ascension. So the galactics essentially are us and our energetic connections to them overall time, because time does not exist. And once we have empowered and evolved the human vessel to such a degree, then what we are able to do is energetically connect to all aspects of time, because what we do is we break through the threshold of the linear time, what is here. The linear time is kept in place by fear and negativity. Once you have that yin and yang here, once you balance that and you begin to put in the light and reduce the negativity, then you have access to what's above the veil. Then you have access to your gifts, to your energetics. And this also is why always my teachings and what I put out there is to empower the individual with this, because once it gets you up there to that level, then boom, the confirmations come flooding into you. It rapidly weeds out the aspects of fear like doubt, uncertainty, negativity, because these are all of them are negatively charged and they do disempower you. That's why they must go, and it allows you to rise into the other dimensions.
Yeah. So on one hand, they disempower you and reinforce the linear timeline. And I guess on another way to approach it, which would be maybe a new subject, which is disengaging from the hold linear time has on us. Because I know that's something that's I've kind of, I don't want to say fought, but how do you detach from that? How do you detach from those deadlines?
Okay. Well,
I've been working on that, as an individual and even in the Soulgy group, and disallowing the disempowering effect of deadlines, timelines. I'm sorry, of the linear timeline, and doing my best to go quantum and take that part of it out.
but see what's occurring. The process is perfect, and what's occurring for you to know how to rise up to the 5D timeline, you also need to know what holds you in the 4D. So that's why you are flipping up in a 5D, also down in a 4D. You are subjugated to that 4D until you learn and master what sets you free. This is why periodically back and forth. So you're showing what you must master, and it's all the fear aspects and all of these, and you'll be showing when you rise up. Then you'll resort to a fear-based moment. Boom, you're back down in. You're attracting all the negativity and the mundane. So this is how you're being taught, and also for to integrate within the consciousness how to outmaneuver the veil and the negativity and to propel yourself forward. And there does come that time where we're going that the darkness and the negativity no longer serves. It does not have to. Each one has the choice and the opportunity to rid it from their being forever and to create the time and the space, temporarily with your human vessels to go there to a place of complete harmony and a place where, none of the mundane has any control over you. So you create that and you also put yourself in there. But it is a process. We are ascending with the human vessels intact. And part of that process is training the human brain, which is part of this organic existence. You need to have the keys, the fundamentals, and the know-how to power yourself up. So again, it's a process, and I work with many on all levels. First thing, when I begin to work with someone that's awakened, I just say, all of the fear aspects got to go, all of the negativity. Sometimes I'm allowed to create a miracle for one that needs to propel forward very quickly to take their place in line with the overall divine plan. But having said this, no, it's a process that each one has to do, and they are subjugated to their deepest fears, the most intense negativity, and it'll be compounded at these very times because of the light quotient on the surface. It's pressuring all of them. This is then it's being reflected and equated into the madness that you're seeing, people being mad, and that's what it's doing. It's creating that, which is very good and it's very beautiful. This is all part of the process that has to occur to set us temporarily free. Now I say temporarily free because we become free, but we go beyond that. So we have the temporary freedom, but we keep building and add the harmony and other things with the freedom.
Yeah, I love that explanation too, because of the ebb and flow part of it, as you're explaining it. I think for our human aspect, for our evolving divine human aspect, there's still the word human in it, and it takes some getting used to holding that vibration up there. You know, it takes
It
some
does.
getting used to living without what we've been living with. You know, I think that's that's really kind of, in layman's terms, what I'm getting from what you're saying. You know, some people talk about, you know, allowing time for the neural pathways to set in and all, but I think at a human level, it takes a little getting used to, you know, even if it is our natural nature, it takes a little getting used to holding that vibration and sustaining that frequency of 5D. Yeah.
It does, you know, and one of the suppressing things to overcome with that is to look at yourself. I mean, and are you really human when you're able now, when you have the knowledge and are able to manifest and do all this incredible magic? Are you really any longer human? So I say no. You are a divine being, and you are a humanoid, or you are a divine being within the human vessel. And this is what the teachers, you know, for in many of the teachings through all time taught. And this is very true. And it's just at this time that the ascension is the process of all of us activating this and understanding that we are no longer human. We are even above superhuman. You have to say and accept and own that you are, I say, an angel, because that's
Yeah.
my description, and
Yeah.
it's my knowing of what everyone can attain and access. And with that comes your full free will and ability at creating your reality further down the line. And part of my overall task here is to assist ones with building themselves up first in the process. Then, once they have come to the yin yang level and that balance, then begin enhancing their gifts outward and, uh, let's say, restoring their memory to their divine sub creator gifts that they actually have. But it's a transition. Father, you know, the other day again, Father, 2 words. You know, I wanted to jump these timelines. I always do, because I know how the story ends. And it's just like me watching a movie over again. But Father reminded me, I'm here, and he said 2 words, a transitional process. So,
Yeah.
and that's what it is. It's always been that. But again, you know, for my sake, if you will, I was reminded that again. And that's what it is.
And you know, with the understanding of what you said about at the top of the show about, well, and we've said this before, I mean, this thing's happening. You let go or be dragged. But
No, no.
on an individual level, going back to the human aspect of us, divine human, however you want to describe it, the transition that Father talked to you about, transitioning. How important is it, if this is happening inevitably, that the conscious human make the decision, have the desire, put action behind the desire to align with the universal, be it all of our other aspects, our higher self, Father God, Mother Universe, and so on?
Let me say in reply to that, that it's ascertained and assured that the soul does do that. What they will realize, if they have conscious resistance to it, they will begin to be set up with negative experiences, roadblocks that will divert them. And after a while, once they hit the brick or hit against a brick wall a dozen times, then they'll realize, follow the flow, do not restrict the plan. Then they are guided. But it's always assured from their soul level. But to assure that it's integrated within their consciousness enough, they are subjugated to it many times until they actually integrate the knowledge of what it is, the dynamics of it, and also how to master it. And again, that is part of the process. And every individual, there is a uniqueness to it, to what they experience, to what leads them up to it. But what I will say, and I have seen that at some times, that there is divine intervention to assure that, to get one back on track. So there is a safeguard to that respect, a nurturing safeguard to assure they do get there, but there is that individual consciousness which can, yes, get some off track. And I also work with others like that. You know, sometimes when they're getting a little bit off, I come in and say, you know, hey, what about this perspective? Don't forget, you know, your profound experience you were shown by God. You cannot deny that. And you know, then they remember that, and it raises them up because they know it's true at those severe moments when the veil starts to come back down.
I like that. I like that. I might call mine sanity safeguard. but yeah, you know what it is. You're right about that. I hadn't thought about that, but we can all look back to divine episodes and divine experiences, angelic, galactic, you know, whatever that we've had on our path, and we got to remember those things. We got to remember we were shown or given those things or created those things with purpose. So the other thing I'll say too is, you know, as much as intense as the first 13 days have been of January, you know, what you were talking about in terms of resisting, I don't want to say a soft resistance, but I think it's, you know, obviously the more we expand, the more aware we become. But these levels, the depths of, you know, like if I look at yesterday, the deepest rooted fears I had, and I'm not typically very fearful, you know, and that may be an egoic statement, and maybe that's why I was taken to some depths of fear, because I was just, on one hand, I was struck by the 5 or 6 things that represented my deepest core fears. But on the other hand, I thought to myself, wait a minute, these are like, you know, these are like the hard shell over the soul here. These are the where the deepest loves are, and the deepest passions, and the deepest, you know, wanting to serve, and all these things. So that to me, you know, although it was a little discomfort, was also very encouraging. That I'm even becoming aware of certain things, and I'm not stuck on the stupid. You know, I'm more stuck on, wow, what's this going to bring? You know,
and this is so important too, Todd. Like you reach that certain aspect where you surpass what you would call the ego and let it to no longer restrict you. Because again, the bad ego, if you will, is attached to your human existence.
yeah,
But there comes a time that you must surpass that and own what you are in connection with God. You are a divine being. You are an ascended master. You are all of these. If you don't own them and you say, no, I'm just human, well, you keep yourself in that stasis of just being a human. You disown your powers and your prowess. You got to own it. And you can't let words like ego or grandiose, you can't let any of that suppress you. You have to rise above it and know that these are actually 3D words that were constructed to keep you confined within a certain reality. And no, we are outgrowing that, all of us. And many have stepped into their divinity, and you can ask many that have done this when they broke through that egoic state that then they embraced. They said, no, I'm an ascended master. And if you were to interview them, and perhaps you did, you will hear them saying at that level, when they did that, boom, their memory started coming in, their gifts, the magic started occurring because they began to own what they are. They did not own just being human anymore, which kept them encapsulated.
Yeah. And I think, and the term only human, I think, is a little bit different than, you know, because I know, like when I woke up, that's the first thing I said, I'm not human. But after a few years, I realized having all that knowledge up there, or being connected, was great. But we're going through what we're going through. And the more I began to honor the human and bring that stuff into, and I'm speaking like this is past tense, this is like just recent. Like I'm learning every day, just, being with Morgan and just be doing the work I do. But the term took me a long time to understand, and that was to embody these things that we've learned into the divine human. This experience isn't for naught. This experience carries a certain amount of magic with it in the transmutation of what we might consider the lower density vibration of the human experience. There's some type of transformation taking place that we're all involved in, that is actually quite honorable, extremely honorable, infinitely honorable, and certainly deserves the respect and gratitude, and also the pat on the back, because we raised our hand to be here. So it's a phenomenal integration of all these things that we discover and become aware of, and act and invoke and experience. It really is. And I want to thank you for this mind expanding broadcast, because it's been a very, very good one. I thought 13 would be a good day. The 111 was like a kickoff. 112 was like a kick in the ass. And I woke up this morning, I thought, well, what's 13? Well, my birthday is in that 13th horoscope sign that they dropped. I forget the name of it. And I thought, maybe it's 13 is going to be, 13 is that, that hidden tribe and all that stuff, the sign of it, the energetic implications of it. It's going to be a very good day. So it's been a very good day today. And thank you for sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence. And also, again, on behalf of everybody, for all the work that you do every day on behalf of humanity, is there anything, I know you've talked about, some things that are happening you can't talk about. And I'm not into forecasting anything because it takes all the fun out of it, but is there anything coming up? We seem to be in this space between the two eclipses. This blood wolf moon eclipse is coming up on the 21st. Seems to be very, very significant. Is there anything you can lead us into with that, or a heads up on that, or what we could expect?
What I will say, what I did receive is just full moon, again, important, and nothing else with that. I received that the last couple of days. So another important date. Do you know what date that is, Todd?
21st. Yeah.
21st. Okay, another important date. I'm given, I was given the 11th was an important date. I don't know actually what occurred, but I do know that something big did happen. I didn't check that. But the 17th to the 19th, there is something happening on the 17th and 18th, which leads up to something bigger on the 19th. I do know that. And what I'm feeling with that, with actually not receiving any direct information, what I'm feeling is that I believe it pertains to big announcements in the U.S.
Very good.
On certain things.
Well, that would be
what I'm feeling.
Yeah. That's good. That's good info. And I guess when you get right down to it, at some point, and I'm saying this with it's a term of endearment with the highest respect, is at some point there's going to be enough talking about it, and it's going to be done as a reflection of the work we've done within ourselves. So that jives with some of the stuff that's been coming out on the alt news, and that I think will be another step as these expressions of sovereignty have been in India, Canada, and France, and throughout other parts of the world that are getting less press.
Yeah, it's expanding, yes. And the degree of, I don't follow the channeling. I don't have time to follow anyone else's things, but I do know, and I can say that the authenticity of the channelers should be completely accurate. And if you look back on what some of those channelers prophetized before, you will see that you got clear documented confirmations in this time. Again, totally accrediting and validating what they are in their sources.
Yeah.
Now, not to get confused, there are different perspectives, but they're all correct in what they do because they pertain to different levels.
Pamela Johnson, our dear sister, beloved sister, she says it's 21st in the UK, 20th in the Americas. So your 17th, 18th, 19th leads right up into that.
Then we got the 20th and the 21st, and just in the 22nd, someone mentioned the 22nd the other day, and my spidey senses started tingling, if you will. So there's something about that time as well. I'm not given what, but with so much happening globally, I will say it's connected to that.
Yeah, that resonates. Rick, thanks a lot. We're gonna get ready for the next show in 20 minutes with a divine feminine full of sacred wisdom, Monique Kendre from South Australia. I look forward to seeing you again. I look forward to collaborating with you again. The platform's always open to support you. If you have the initiative and you feel it resonates at any time, all you got to do is hit me up or hit Morgan up. She's been handling the scheduling lately. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I want to say thank you to Morgan for that. Yeah.
That's great. So, that's great to see everything going together and keep united, keep connected. Let no differences come between you nor hold you back. They disempower. So I love you all. Kiss, peace, and all kinds of good winks. And we'll catch you later. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Rick.